Welcome to the SWBL podcast. I am your host, Bryan Benware, and tonight I am joined by the mad scientist, the stats guy, the numbers guy, Professor Pete. He is in the house to do our final episode of season 20. Wrap that up as we look forward to season 21, but this is the season 20 review, and it is mostly stats focused. Hence why Pete is on here tonight. How are you doing, Pete? How you feeling? What's been going on in your world lately?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Brian. You caught me at an interesting time. As we discussed, I'm on the IR right now. John put me on as of today, just for a week. Had a pretty major medical procedure this morning. I think, women might say no big deal, but I think guys like us, we'd say that's significant. You need some time off after that.
Yeah.
So we're doing good. Gearing up for the holiday season, and just ready to work a little less and spend some time with the family a little more around this time.
Good, man. Yeah, it is the holiday season. Christmas is literally this coming weekend. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. We hope you were all out and enjoying some time with your family, with your friends, getting some wiffle balls in your stockings, and hoping for either a repeat or of last season for next year, or maybe you ask Santa for maybe some better players or some better stats coming up in season 21. So, well, let's dive right into it, man. I'm going to hand the reins pretty much over to Peter and just comment from here on out, but he's got a lot of items that we're going to touch on tonight to look back on, performances that were good and some that weren't so good. So, Peter, take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Doing this, we wanted to add a visual here for everyone to look at, but we are going to recap season 20. Had a lot more than 20 chart-topping hits. I think in the championship game alone, probably had closer to 30.
Yeah.
But the season came and went, and this time the off season, no one's really talking or thinking about wiffle ball very much at all. I mean, Brian, we probably are. We're cut from a different cloth, as you know. But when the holidays come and the winter meetings around the corner, that's when you can tell it starts heating up and contract changes are happening. So kind of a quick reminder of what went down, last May, since it's been 6+ months, and how we expect things to kind of unfold going into next season. So, you can't recap 2022 without putting a picture of Gus on the page. Probably had the best year all around in the franchise era. Took home the MVP, the side wiffle, led the Yanks to the championship. So you'll see here on the left is how the regular season finished. It was always the Orioles and Yankees battling for 1 and 2, with the Twins pretty solidified as the number 3 team, fighting off the Marlins and winning that division. Marlins and Sox, played in the wild card game with the Astros and A's, just fallen narrowly out of playoff contention. The Rockies and Expos kind of in their own color. Where I'm from, Brian, red's generally not a good color in spreadsheets or PowerPoints.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into them a little later, but a couple interesting tidbits about last year. When you get over to the playoffs, these 4 games on the right were rematches of games that had unfolded in the regular season that actually had the opposite outcome. So the Marlins and White Sox faced off. The Sox actually beat them by 8 in the regular season. Clearly, the Marlins got their revenge when it mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Marlins beat the Orioles by 3 in the regular season. Orioles came back and beat them by 3, in that semifinal, followed by the Yanks and Twins. Twins got them by 1. Yanks got them by 6 to get into the finals. And once more, Orioles beat the Yankees by 3, the first game of the season for the Yanks, bright and early, 7:15, I believe. And then the Yankees won by 4 in a high-powered, shootout of a championship. So when you look at that, Brian, you look at the standings and the run differentials, anything that sticks out to you based on last year?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it just goes to show you, we preach it a lot, but the team that gets hot at the end of the season can really make a run, whether you're, a 10-0 team you know, 8-2 or 6-4, 5-5, you know, those wild card teams can really, they might on paper might not look like as much of a competitor, but as the Marlins showed us, you know, they got hot at the right time. Their chemistry really clicked. They were able to come back and like you said, get some revenge on the White Sox there and actually get further than, you know, any of the surprise teams in the past, other than the Expos, I should say, but some of the teams who've always been sort of below the radar, but actually like go beyond and make it into that semifinal. You know, the Orioles were great all season and the Yankees and Twins were great all season. So it wasn't really a shocker. I think the bigger shock was, you know, the Twins only putting up 9 runs in that semifinal. You know, the Yankees have always been a high powered offense. And it's really, if they're all clicking, then they're a tough team to beat. And that's why, you know, in the end, they ended up winning the whole thing. But not really any huge surprises for me, just kind of proves the point of what we've been saying over the past, I don't know, however many years, 5, 6, 7 years, that you get hot at the right time and you can go a long way.
Yeah, no, you mentioned when I think about that tier 3 teams that have made magic happen and gotten to the championship, it started miraculously with the A's getting to the finals. And then when the Expos did it and won, they jumped way over the A's in terms of that group. And now the Marlins have solidified themselves as that tier 3 team that can turn it around in a year or two and compete. I think people came into this season thinking that the radar gun being public to the pitcher would be a advantage for the pitcher, but I think we found out that it was really the opposite with all the those extra pitches that, you know, it's too hot, you get a new one. Instead of the inning ending, it's the rally continues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to have to be on people's minds. I think the only person that really managed the radar gun effectively as a pitcher and it coasted at 54, 55 was none other than Sam Skibby.
Yeah.
Probably practices with it 3-4 times a week. So I would expect that.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do when you're able to control it. And I mean, in the sense, control the actual speed gun, have it, you know, at your house. And
yep. And, you know, Sam has a pocket radar gun and it's for his pocket. He doesn't wear pants without pockets so that he always has it with him.
Yeah.
Especially at school in the gym.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, tons of offense in the regular season. The championship game at 23-19 was the high scoring game of the season, high scoring championship ever. And the funny part is it featured probably the 2 best pitchers in the league. And still, you know, so you still see fireworks. That seems to happen a lot in the playoffs around here. Doesn't matter how good you are on the mound, people will catch up. But yeah, I mean, each team, I don't expect a lot of change going into this season as far as rosters and where things land, but, you know, we'll kind of dive into that here a little bit as we go.
Sounds good.
So, you know, there were a lot of surprises to me, you know, every year there are. So just thought we were going to call some of those out. It's got to start with Jack Leicht coming in at number 5, you know, 13 years old. I think he was 12 during the season. So his second year and the youngest player we've ever had, got a few more bats than he did the first year. You know, you might say, oh, we've added 400. That's great, but that's only 5 at bats. But here's another tidbit for you. There's a pretty decent list of guys that he outperformed technically, if you want to throw that out there. So it'll be interesting to see what the Expos do. No, you know, plenty of playing time. I think, you know, if you have a pulse and you're slightly drunk or you're too young to drink, then they'll throw you out there.
Yeah.
And Jack's got plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
Number 4, we'll take it to the godfather of the A's. Paul took a pretty big jump down year over year, dropping 7 spots and average 14 spots and home runs. And after leading the league 2 years ago with a filthy 2.44 ERA, he dropped upwards to over 12. So I've always said the A's are going to go as Paul goes. So this is not good for the A's, is what I would say there. Number 3, I think we were all surprised by the Rockies. Their performance, should I say that it was rocky? I think it was. Thanks for laughing, Brian. My wife wouldn't laugh at that probably. But I mean, the Rockies got blown out by the Orioles in their first game Friday night, maybe 20-0 or something like that, and just never recovered. They were missing Grant Boyd, COVID reasons, but I don't think he could come back and solve all the problems they have. I hear that Blake and company will keep manning the ship, and maybe some more Mo Whiff talent making its way into the league would be appropriate. They've got a few. So this is a team that'll be very curious. You can't imagine they're going to finish with 2 wins or even 3, this year. They've got to bounce back to what they can be. On the flip side, we have the Marlins, kind of a positive surprise. I was really not too surprised by Jordan Smith's performance. Definitely was surprised that he finished right outside the MVP conversation, but more surprised from Luke, the number 3 MVP. That's got to be the first time he's been top 3, I would think. So those two together were, the Bash Brothers, I'm sure is what they call each other in their group text thread. Rudnick and Eli and the rest of the team, they're kind of a distant, 3-4 in the order. So they might have to think about that. And the ERA was 5th, but they're neck and neck for 6 and 7. So pitching wasn't stellar, but they obviously got the hitting, got them to where they needed to be. But my biggest surprise, Brian, and I'm curious if something shakes up here, because this one has kept me up at night many times. I just can't get over it. But Will Rath did not bat, did not step into the box, Brian. And I think that, well, let me just put it this way. In the, first pitch strike era, it's been 7 years. He's 13th in average, 7th in home run rate. 3 of those Twins guys probably are way above that, so I get it. But in even the past 3 years, where he's only gotten 26 at bats, but he's 5th in OPS, 3rd in home run rate. So, I mean, any other team, put him in an A's jersey, maybe an Expo, spread the wealth, Chris Metter, or you and Edlow might need to have a conversation because it's getting a little hot in the kitchen, I think. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple thoughts on this list here, but to start with Will, I didn't even realize he had numbers that good. And I know Chris and the team and even will say like he's a team guy first and he'll do whatever needs to be done. And the Twins were a top 3 team, so kind of can't argue with that. But at the same time, I mean, if you got those kind of numbers, there's got to be games or moments where you can get him a few at bats. And Chris has also talked to me a lot about sort of his management philosophy in manufacturing runs. What his thought process is as the leadoff hitter on the team, just to get on base to manufacture runs with those 2 power guys behind him. But I don't know why you would maybe not consider, having that 4th guy. Or even going to a game where you hit 5 and letting Will be another guy with, a good OBP, help you manufacture some more runs, get more runners on base for some of those power guys. So surprising that he had a big old goose egg there. And I think if any captains are paying attention to this and they're looking for a guy to either be their ace or solidify their rotation and maybe add some offense to their team, Will should be a target for that captain for sure. I mean, when we signed David, not to talk about myself too much, but when we signed David, that was one of the reasons he decided to be an Astro, was he wanted some more at bats than he was able to get. So if you're a captain out there with the ability to get Will some at bats, you really should consider seeing if he'd be interested in joining your team. A couple other real quick thoughts though on this list. Paulie is one of the more underrated fielders, especially in left field in our league. I mean, we talk about it a little bit every now and then, but maybe this is the year that they really consider just having him be their all-time left fielder, and they try to solidify the rotation in a different way. I mean, who knows? He could turn it around again next year and be solid on the mound, because he's had great years in that. I mean, 2 years ago, like you said, he was amazing, but maybe take that pressure off of him and let him get back to being the power hitter and a big boost in your offense the way he can be. So, and then, yeah, I mean, Jack Light hitting 400. Yeah, it's only 5 at bats, but on a 2-8 team, you'd think they could have found more at bats for him. So I don't see how it can hurt to try to give the kid some more playing time if you're going to just keep losing 8 anyway. I mean, he's the future of the league. He's the future of your franchise. Get him some playing time, I think.
It's not your fault, Jack. Uncle Pete loves you. He will get there in time. Probably have a team of his own, see how our backs hold up in the next few years.
Yep.
So let's move on. Let's go to the 3 phases of this game. So we love offense. We love hitting dingers. And again, I felt like I had to highlight Gus's name. I even drew red circles. I didn't take that picture. I think Gus voluntarily, he's seen the website. He put that up there. But this table that you see sorted by average, probably one of my more favorite stats to look at. And if you kind of scan the list, you can see how people finished. Obviously, Gus and the Yankees just put on a show. When Scott Poley's your least effective hitter, that's a great thing. Spencer finished number 2 MVP with Luke leading that charge from the Marlins. It almost seems like Luke just needed someone like Jordan by his side, a little Pippen Jordan type of thing to get himself going.
Yeah.
And Brett finished just outside that MVP conversation. He's obviously number 2 Cy Wiffle. I mean, when you compare year to year through the whole franchise era, it's got to be Brett's best offensive year or one of them. And the pitching was as steady as always. And then partner him with Sam. When you speak about the two buddies on a team, they paired well, for the Orioles. You'll see Platinum Hands, new face, Cole Layton of the Astros, really came in. I mean, the last 2 years, and especially last year, came in with very high expectations. He got a lot of fantasy ownership for fielding without really any proven history. So a good value to people that know him, like his captain or, Mo Whiff players. And he proved it. We'll get to the stats and defense a little bit, but he dominated that, took the crown there. And some rookies on the Rockies and Evan Quo of the A's, probably had about 4 or 5 rookies last year. They finished at the top. But these are, Brian, this is what I spend my time doing, looking at some of these metrics. You can kind of see things that pop out to you. John Callaway's home run rate at 15% seems very low. Clearly he was focusing getting on base, relying on the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
I see Derek Cornell batting .413 at the bottom, led the league in strikeouts. That I wouldn't expect that to repeat. The Expos as a team, they congregate there near the bottom of the table. That must be where the alcohol is. But Jeremy led the charge for them, batting .367. He's, I just played wiffle ball with Jeremy a couple nights ago, and he's ready to, not committed to the Expos. It doesn't sound like. So,
okay.
Kevin, you might want to get on that, but he's ready to step in and keep dominating on the plate and in the mound.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this, Brian? What kind of offensive, metrics or things stuck out to you? And then as you're looking at this,
Brian Kenny hitting .342, only 4 home runs. He hasn't always been the guy known for power, but at the same time, you need a leadoff guy that's going to get on base better than that. That clip there. So that was a big, kind of always being a little bit in the hole, starting off your lineup that way. That was one thing stuck out. Steve Hayes having a bit of a drop off this year, had a fantastic season 19. He wasn't terrible, but just not, I'm sure he would say not the season he wanted to have. And, he and Paul right there alongside each other there. So they only combined for 20 home runs together. So you got guys hitting that on their own. So definitely, I think an area of opportunity for the A's next year. Get those guys going again. Jimmy Stout coming in to replace John Callaway on the Astros. The John being the best hitter on the Astros in season 19. was a big hole to fill when he decided to start his own team. And Jimmy kind of unofficially took that role, but really did. I mean, he stepped in, hit 615, 11 home runs, um, did hit a lot of singles too, more singles than I think he's had in any other season. So kind of an unsung hero for the Astros there. Those things kind of stuck out to me. There was one more I just noticed, and I got to get back down to it. Let me see here.
Well, I can add a few for you. I mean, as we're
Yeah.
talking about the Astros, I mean, I see David right there in the middle of the table, 500.
Yep.
Second best hitter after Jimmy, of course, and after managing David with the Brewers, and he always wanted to bat more, and it was tough to find time. He seems to keep proving that he's worthy of more at bats. I mean, a few years back, nobody would, trust David for their fantasy team or understand, he didn't have a lot of metrics to back it up, but he's building his sample size over the years.
Yep.
And proven himself to support Jimmy and, the future of the Stros. Kevin Pulley at the top probably had I would say that's maybe his best year that he's had in the franchise era.
Yeah.
Outside that MVP conversation, really outclassing Scott and him and Sam Bakula, just to that Yankee offense. I mean, clearly they're not going to change a thing next year, nor should they. But that team was just very well rounded.
Absolutely. Yeah. David, back to him. The thing with David is he's a little streaky. I think he had one game where he hit 4 home runs and 4 at bats, and just clobbered. And then about 2 games later, he went 0 for 5. So hopefully he can kind of figure that out, level that out a little bit. And then he could be, a real force at the plate. The other thing I was going to kind of touch on with Derek Cornell and John, you got those 2 lefty at bats. Trees make a difference in your power numbers there, and I think that's part of the reason that you see 6 with Derek and only 8 with John. So it might be something where you consider a lineup order change, spread that out a little bit, where maybe that you're slowing down your momentum with 2 lefties. Depending on how you choose to put them in the order, but that could be something to maybe look at for John this coming year if he wants to maybe mix it up. So they're one of the few teams with the lefty side kind of more prominent in their lineup. So something to consider there. And lastly, Brett having 11 walks, especially with the radar gun and all the extra pitches and all that stuff, that's a lot of patience to not swing. So that's pretty impressive there. I mean, Gus had 12. He's the only one above Brett, but he also was far and above everybody else. So can't really shy away from that. So pretty impressive number there when you consider kind of the ebbs and flow of the season this past year.
Yeah, I mean, Gus was a unicorn off on his own, and if the walk count for Brett tells me he's a team player, and if he had gotten ambitious and chased some balls to try to hit more home runs, and it worked out well, you certainly would have seen him in the MVP conversation, and obviously not catching Gus by any means, but you got to love that as a teammate. I mean, Medder's probably always going to have a high walk count. He's going to have a high on base percentage. And you mentioned I keep getting stuck on David. You mentioned he's the streakiness. When I look at his 25% strikeout rate, I think that really tells the story too. I mean, that's something you gotta work down to get the ball in play a little bit more. But when you see him finishing higher than PG, Blake, Paul, Edlow, it stands out. So
yeah.
Now we'll head to the mound. We're gonna go for a mound visit. We'll call it. If the people shaded in orange are really the full-time pitchers from last year. Those are the guys that you likely would see have a higher inning pitch count, who's have the largest sample size to really evaluate here. But a quick look from a team perspective on the right, I mean, you could see the Orioles and Yankees certainly had the best pitching rotation as it seemed throughout the year. Then there's some teams fighting there in the middle. The only thing that really struck out to me was a low strikeout count for the Marlins. Everybody else, is 20 to 27. That's very, very consistent.
Mhm.
Rockies, of course, Chad had a tough go on the mound. Expos, seeing the Twins at 7 in ERA, that's certainly a surprise for anybody that's paid attention over the years. So you got to assume that might improve a little bit. But from a team perspective, that's how it kind of fared. And you see it was kind of Sam, Gus, and Brett at the top there. Things that stick out to me that I think, for next year, Jimmy only pitched a couple innings, but he's always been a guy that can step on the mound when needed. I was thinking the White Sox might use Derek Moore on the mound, but they clearly went with Ty to support Jackson. So in Derek's 8 innings, very, very solid numbers as you see him there near the top. You go find Ty hanging out near the bottom. He got rocked a little bit around. So you got to think John might evaluate that a little bit. But you're always going to see these guys at the top. You're going to see Jackson. Will finish a little lower than I would have thought. Jimmy Nelson still led the league in Ks, probably the 5th year running. And then, there's guys at the bottom that seem surprising. Blake is always consistent, and he's really your highest ERA amongst full-time pitchers. Paul, came off a dominant year. Chad, Spencer, Jeremy, those are some ace reliant type pitchers that are going to need to turn around for these teams. So
Yeah.
anything jump to you, Brian, on this?
Yeah, I mean, the Expos had 26 strikeouts as a team, and Jimmy Nelson had 20 of those. So again, I think Jeremy has the potential to be a great number 2 if he stays there. But if he doesn't, they've got to get some more production out of their number 2 pitcher, because that's what got them to a championship when they had Brett, having a 1-2 that were dominant. And without that and the lack of offense that the Expos can put up, they're really going to need somebody to kind of step up and help Jimmy out and not put it all on his shoulders. Jimmy also gives up a lot of home runs. He gave up 32, kind of looked at that. So he's I mean, it's either boom or bust with him. So he wasn't the highest. The highest is Spencer Bogad, which was surprising. Now, granted, he's gonna probably face some tougher competition. I know he prefers that to go against some of the harder teams. So, but 37 is a little surprising. Kind of a crazy year for him. ERA over 11. There was who was the ERA I just found? I mean, Sam having a 3.5 ERA, pretty dang good. But it's not surprising. I think that the Astros having the 3rd best ERA, and giving up they were low on the strikeout numbers, but that number actually kind of surprises me. In the moment, felt like we were struggling a little bit more than we actually did. So pretty happy about that. Jackson was still really good on the mound, 6.9 ERA. He did give up 24 home runs, but he had 16 strikeouts. So pretty good numbers there. What you want to see out of that. And, Chad Young giving up the second most home runs when he's your ace. That's I think you got to kind of turn that around. I know he struggled a little bit getting the speed control down from time to time, and I think he got in his head a little bit, but he's got the potential to be really solid. So those were sort of my thoughts initially when looking at this. What else do you see that kind of stands out to you?
Well, and I think when managers are looking to figure out what kind of new pitching they can, utilize in the future years, I think if you look at the bottom of the table, we can at least eliminate some guys from that list. Chris Vorback, I'm a little proud to say that the Orioles did that to him. he actually, I was really scared to see Paul on the mound, and then I see Vorbeck up there throwing around. We gave him a 45 ERA, so they may have to look elsewhere for pitching, as will the Marlins, because Luke Bacula had a rough go with some team, and Adam North. I mean, it's infinite. We can't even really talk about it. We need a little more time to go, but I get caught up. Yeah, Spencer's performance alone, although it really led 4-1. The team wins, but that his performance leading the league in home runs allowed, that could crack the top 5 surprise list. Marlins, it's always been, who's better, Trent or Josh?
Yeah.
And they're always right there neck and neck. But yeah, I mean, I think, Evan Quo had a decent performance for a new rookie, a southpaw. Got rocked around a little bit, but he comes in ahead of a lot of these big names that you see. So it's you'll likely see a lot of those shaded pitchers going again. You might see someone like Derek or Jimmy, or maybe Peter Leicht there. I'm at the top of the table. I guess I could have mentioned that. Had a couple good innings against the Athletics.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to John, see if I can get a little more action next year.
There you go. Another thing that stands out with the Yankees, Gus obviously went inside wiffle was great, but Scott had a great year too. 7.1 ERA, gave up 21 hits, but only 9 home runs, single digits. So I know it was limited innings. He did 10.5 innings over the whole season, but the way they had used their rotation was kind of brilliant. It was a little bit unorthodox, not having guys try to go full games and stuff like that, kind of picking and choosing where you're going to get innings for him, and allowing Gus to face a lot of teams, not just, the traditional six teams or whatever, and get your innings maxed out. They were great, and he was amazing. He was great, when he was up there. So hats off to him, and really kept the Yankees had the second best ERA in the league, and led the league in strikeouts. So pretty good numbers there.
I could stare at it all day and pick a number that stands out to me. So the last one I'll say is Sam Skibby only having 19 hits allowed. Only in 21 innings, his strikeout count's still very high. His strikeout rate's probably the highest in the league. Didn't give up a lot of hits either. And, he just had a really solid year. I mean, Gus's performance, Gus stole all the wins from Scott. So that wasn't very nice, but that really probably pushed Gus over the top, on Cy Wiffle. So we'll see if they duke it out again next year.
Yeah. Interesting to see Sam go 2-2 with those kind of numbers. So maybe that's kind of failed him a little bit.
Indeed. So we'll give a quick shout out to the defense. It's, as we mentioned earlier, Cole Layton, pretty much secured the platinum hands, I think, early on. Didn't make an error, and made a lot of fantastic plays. Like these are primarily the top left fielders, or those that got that kind of playing time listed here, top to bottom. Shout out to Brett. That's 33 chances with not a single assist. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did it on purpose, but
could call him, selfish, but
yeah, well, but he takes a lot of walks, we decided. So we'll have to investigate him a little bit, but Orioles were the only team with no errors in the regular season. So that stood out a little bit. Even the Twins and other teams are human. But we can't expect a lot of changes in the field. I think most teams are pretty solid in what they're going to do. Depends on, and some teams depends on who's pitching. Then some teams just had kind of mixed it around a little bit. Even the Orioles kind of rotated everything a little bit, and it didn't seem to be to a detriment. So you'll probably see a lot of these same names jumping up and down a little bit going into season 21. Any thoughts, Brian?
not really. Cole, this was his first full year in left field too, and he took advantage of it. But I think the big thing is, for the last however many years, it's really been a 2-horse race between Chris and BK, kind of going back and forth there. And I think Cole with the season he had. He's put his name out there to contend for Platinum Hands. Ty's been in the conversation multiple times, just always seemed to get slightly outplayed by somebody, but had a really good year, only one error. Those assists, I think, really make a big difference. And even Luke, like we talked about with Luke, maybe getting him off the mound and full-time left field, who knows what he could do. I think there's defense is becoming a bigger part of the game as we get older, which is ironic to say, but some of the power numbers might change. We get a little bit slower, so it's easier maybe to get an out. But at the same time, I think people are realizing the importance of defense, and some of the ways that a great left fielder can make a difference in both the win column, but then in a championship type team. So I think you'll see a lot more people kind of sticking with one guy in left field if possible. Obviously, the Yankees had their rotation between Gus and Scott out there, depending on who's pitching. But for the most part, you're going to start seeing it. I think you're going to start seeing more guys just staying put in that spot, especially if they're your best defender. So that's all I kind of have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like BK, who's always top two, coming in around fifth, is not so much at his detriment. If he had more chances, he probably would slide up there a little bit. But I think the Rockies they kept sending the ball go out of the yard, and not a lot of ground ball chances for him. So he has a team. The Yankees. Mentioned the Orioles, no errors. Yankees had 2, Twins and Marlins had 3, Sox and Astros had 4. The Rockies had 5, the Athletics had 8, and the Expos had 13. So, but let's have some fun, Brian.
Absolutely.
I sometimes, if I go out to Hollywood Casino, I'll, peruse, I'll play a little blackjack, and I see this guy at the table next to me, and he's having a great time. Got some ladies with him. He's got quite a bit of chips in front of him. So, we're gonna do a little gamble segment. Obviously, we're not, call 1-888-bets off if you need to. Don't gamble away your rent money. But I've been in communication with Vegas in general. Got some odds for some things that I might dabble in my 401k. So let's jump into those.
All right.
So I'm gonna get out some free money here. These are locks. The odds on these are not great, but it's kind of a sure thing. They say there's no such thing as a sure thing, Brian, but I think in this case there could be. So I'm looking at those tier 1 teams that finished top 3 last year. They're all going to be in different divisions. I think they were kind of in a league of their own above the wild card. I think it could stay that way. So I'm gonna take all 3 of them to make the playoffs, not even win their division. If they do fall to a wild card, that'll qualify as well. So I'm gonna invest a chunk of change in that. I feel be pretty confident there. Gus finishing top 3 MVP. There may be some Spencers or some Coreys or maybe a Luke and Brett and others that contend again, but I think he's likely in a class of his own. Certainly, again, looking for a little more comfort, top 3, a little safer. So I'm willing to sprinkle some there as well. This bet kind of goes along with my top 3 bet. I don't think the Rockies and Expos really have what it takes to jump into the wild card conversation. So I think I'll guarantee they'll both miss the playoffs again, unless there's some big blockbuster moves that occur. I've got a lot of faith in the White Sox. I think if there's some shifting in the wild card, maybe it's the Marlins that drop out, maybe the Astros hop in, but I feel like the White Sox didn't play their best ball. I think they'll make some adjustments. Derek's bound to do better. I think they can do some pitching tweaks. I'm sure John's shopping around for another guy, maybe a motivator, someone to challenge the team. So I feel pretty good that they'll return, likely in a wild card scenario. But hey, if they want to win their division, we'll take it. And I'll stick with Jimmy Nelson first in strikeouts. I've been putting, quite a bit of money in this every year for the past 5 years. Hasn't let me down. So that's going to buy me a beach house is the plan. Maybe in Florida is in the next 10 years or so, for as long as he keeps throwing the ball. So What do you think, Brian? Anything you would dabble on, or any other locks that you want to declare for the listeners?
I don't know about locks. I was kind of looking at this list and thinking, which one would I put the most money on and which one would I put the least money on? If I were to take these locks into Vegas and play, I think I'd probably put the most money on that top one of the Yankees, Orioles, and Twins, even though Jimmy Nelson first and K is pretty solid pick there to maybe put all your money into as well. And then I think the one I'd put the least amount of money on is going to be the White Sox. Not that I don't think they'll actually make the return to the playoffs, but I think you've got teams like the Marlins, like the Astros. If the Rockies come back to being competitive to fight for that other spot, I think the middle of the pack, or the middle of the pack could make it tougher, but at the same time the White Sox could go and win a division depending on who they draw. So I think that one has probably the most unknown and the most tangible factors that could come into play to affect it more so than the others. So I think the only other thing I would say, I do an over under on wins usually with each team. So we can maybe look at those whenever we start to do some of the team previews, and you and I can get together and see if we want to send some more money down to Mr. Vegas or not.
Yeah, I think maybe it was 2013 ish when Chris Metter kind of drew up some lines and took some bets, helped organize something, and that was a glorious time. There were some head-to-head props. There was all sorts of stuff. So maybe Chris can, when he's listening, he can bring that magic back.
Love that idea.
But let's get a little. Let's go into some sleepers. This is you want to bet a little money, but you want to have a big return. You want to take some risk here. These might be tough, but for me, I look at a guy like Jackson, and he's a we got a lot of two tool guys, the guys that can, top pitchers and hitters. He's always been the pitcher. Not quite dabbled as much in MVP, finishing, but he's had some solid years, a good home run rate, doesn't strike out a lot. He gets on base, but we know he has power as well. So I think I'll take him winning the Cy Wiffle and finishing top 3 in MVP at plus 1,200. He's a guy I'm willing to bet on. Will Rath, we talked about him at the plate. He's never won Cy Wiffle. He's been close a few times. Took some steps back last year, which is why we get some good value on him here. And I think that much like I think Spencer will do a little better, I think Will can as well. Maybe he'll take on some of that lesser competition. And he's got Twins defense behind him, so love his odds there. And then for my same team parlay, went with the hometown Orioles. I'm going to take the over on the win total of 6.5. Brett finishing top 3 in Cy Wiffle again, and Sam finishing top 5 in home runs, which he may have done last year. If he did, it was close. He might have finished just outside. So you gotta love betting on the Orioles. I think taking advantage of Brett and Sam's performance and making some money off it is part of the reason I joined the team, Brian. So
there you go.
You got any big
I thought of a same team parlay. It's more of a lock, I think, than anything, but we'll see. I would say Jimmy first in Ks plus Expos as a team last in runs scored.
Yeah.
I don't know what I put the line at, but plus 1,000 maybe.
You get some good odds on Jimmy, but I think the Expos are likely expected to finish last. So
yeah.
Not a big value there. Sort of sure thing. Let's do some trivia, Brian. So I've got 3 questions here for you. You have not seen them. You do not know what they are, but let me tell you, we played 3 years since the COVID outbreak, and we've kind of morphed back to reality. But those first few years were a little different. These answers are guys that have played full time all 3 years. Looking at the performance for the past 3 seasons, trying to find some trends. So the deal with this game is if you don't get 2 out of 3, then you've got to play a quick game of MFK with me.
Okay.
If you catch my drift. So we'll
All
see
right.
we'll see if we have to get there.
All right.
First question. So which of these players is top 10 home run rate? You've got Scott, Steve, Cam, or Edlow.
Boy, I think Scott is the easy answer, but it makes me think with the way I know you that it's not Scott.
You're on to a good start with that thought process. I'll give you that.
I'm actually gonna go Steve Hayes on this
Okay.
one.
We will go through the answers at the end. We'll build the suspense here a little bit.
All right, cool.
Number 2, which player has the highest batting strikeout rate? The list you don't want to be on. Jimmy Nelson, Alex Heck, Trent Davis, or Grant Boyd.
Oh. Oh man. It's not Grant. Just for fun, I'm going Jimmy Nelson.
Okay. And lastly, which player has the lowest walk rate? Beer league softball, you don't walk, you swing. Who's that guy who refuses to walk to first base? Steve Hayes, Kevin Poley, Jackson, or Sam Rudnick?
I think, man, I kind of want to say Kevin Poley, but I feel like I've seen him on first a decent amount in the past 2 years.
Especially last year. He's either already ran around to home or he was on first.
Yeah. Let's go with Sam Rudnick.
Okay.
I feel like I'm gonna play another game here.
You might. So number 1, you said Steve Hayes. The answer is your teammate Cam Smith.
Oh,
Now that you described me perfectly in the beginning. I snuck that one in there. You'd be like, no way, it's Cam. Is it really? And surely it is. I put some tantalizing names there along with him. So
yeah.
that one's on me, but I really want to play MFK.
Yeah, what a terrible manager I am to not know that.
Which player has the highest batting strikeout rate? You said Jimmy Nelson. The correct answer is Alex Heck.
Alex Heck. Okay.
Yes. So
he only played how many years during the COVID?
He's been, well, he played
because he missed 1 year, right?
He played for 2 when he got back kind of more full time. So his at bat count was pretty high, or kind of in the pool.
Okay.
And number 3, you said Sam Rudnick has lowest walk rate, which is correct. It is Sam Rudnick. So we'll give you 1 out of 3. We're going to go into a little game of MFK. I don't think I need to just spell it out because I think you understand, right?
Yes.
Okay. So MFK, and I think you should know where this is going. David Olderman, Cam Smith, Jimmy Stout.
Oh, okay.
No hard feelings.
Yeah, no hard feelings. I love all of you. So Jimmy, David, and Cam.
Yep.
Damn. All right. Well, I'm gonna marry Jimmy because anybody would be lucky to have him as their soulmate.
You guys would have fun for sure.
Yeah. David is so handsome Dave, that I think I'm gonna take the old F with him.
Makes sense.
Which, just out of process of elimination, for I get a little bit of happiness in this life, means I have to kill Cam, which sucks. But I still love him, and I'll cry while I do it.
And you'll probably have to go to therapy.
Yes, I will.
Well, we'll end on that note. I think that's the appropriate way. Well, that kind of rounds things out. I mean, we'll see if you have any final thoughts, Bryan. But I think for me, I think a lot has changed year to year over the past 5 years. New teams, new players. But I think this year it's really going to be pretty steady. Same teams, same core roster. Grant Boyd was the only real name we were missing last year that couldn't come, as far as I know. So I don't expect an influx of rookies. So I think it's going to be pretty consistent. I would see that standings probably look relatively similar by the end of the year. Especially in pitching and fielding. I think those names are kind of locked in as how well they perform. But any thoughts you want to share?
No, I think you're right. I think, and I'm happy we're doing this review now with free agency being open. Obviously, there have been a couple signees already announced, and I'm sure there's more in Sam's pocket that have been communicated to the front office but haven't been announced on social media quite yet. But it's good for the captains to see some of these numbers because you get kind of into the season, you're not necessarily always noticing some of these players who are having a great year. You kind of, in retrospect, are able to see it, but in the moment, it's kind of hard to see. And if you're a captain trying to fill a hole, these numbers, this kind of review can certainly help steer you in a direction. I agree with you on the fact that I don't know how many more rookies are coming. I think there's been a lot of relationships built with the MOWIF guys, so I could see a couple guys coming over. But seeing what the role is going to be would be interesting. I know we've got a couple people who have played in the past that might want to come back too. But the rosters are getting bigger and bigger over time. It was almost always where it was 4 guys on a roster, and it was those 4 guys. And you're getting to a point now where very few teams have only 4 guys. The Yankees, I think, might have been the only one with 4 guys last year. So I'm not sure how many more rookies the league can honestly support unless we were to go to another expansion or change something up dramatically, which I'm not sure that we really want to do as a league. But I think some of these performances really stand out, and some of these numbers surprised me. And just be interesting to see if any change-ups do happen, what those might be, and how that might impact a team. So,
Indeed.
With that, I'm going to do a little bit of questions for you, like we always do to wrap up. And in the past, we've called this segment The Unknown, which I hated, but didn't have a name for it. And I came up with the name. We're going to try it out for a little bit, see if the fans like it. We're going to call it Hard Hitters. So 5 hard-hitting questions that aren't really hard-hitting, but 5 questions to kind of wrap this podcast up. And, Christmas, like we talked about, is right here coming up this weekend. So a couple Christmas-themed questions for you and some other wiffle ball stuff. So put you on the spot. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Lay up first one here. Best Christmas movie.
Well, I've been on a bender with Henry the past few days watching the Santa Claus, and I'm a big Tim Allen guy. It's a classic to me. It's not going to be on many people's lists, but that's my sleeper pick.
It's a solid one. What is the most underrated part of the sport of wiffle ball? Not necessarily. I didn't want to go toward our league specifically, but what do you think is an underrated aspect of our league? Maybe it's something that people overlook that can make you good, something that an aspect of somebody's game that makes you a great player. What do you think that is?
I think the common cheesy answer for this SWBL is the unprecedented camaraderie, like the bonds you build, like when you care enough to play, and you have a team that since the franchise era, you keep playing with year over year, and you're kind of working towards winning games and championships. Like you become friends. It becomes a year-long thing outside of the actual weekend for us that I've dealt with a lot. But yeah, of course I've dabbled in wiffle ball before SWBL even, and just the yellow bat and ball are always going to be a classic memory. But really the memories and relationships that you're going to build, and then you're going to look back and not even realize the wiffle ball was kind of the foundation.
Yeah. What is the worst Christmas gift you've ever gotten?
I used to get like wool, like Christmas sleeping pants, like jammy pants, flannel every year. Never really wore them, so those just kind of built up in my drawer. But I've since put a stop to that. But yeah, those just, clothes in general, I'd rather just buy them myself.
Mhm.
My waistline fluctuates, winter, I kind of gain a few. And then once football comes in the spring, I'm usually out exercising in those months
Yeah.
leading up. So
Maybe your family members noticed the added pounds, and that's why they went with, a relaxing, stretchy waistband type pant for you.
yeah, the stretch band it's a good benefit of those
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that gift was probably more thoughtful than you realized.
So really not a lot of bad Christmas gifts then, Brian. I think
Yeah.
that there you go.
There you go. All right, well, gift the league something for Christmas. What would you gift the league?
Well, let me give you a two-part answer. If I was, to quote the Bare Naked Ladies, if I had $1 million, I would go through with the right field porch construction that I've heard rumored around, with those pine trees. I'd give those pine trees a good solid trimming. I would, even if it's straight up and down with the wall and you can still kind of play it a little bit. I mean, I'd fix that a little bit, but I think, I'd love to throw some dirt down the hill and really level out the field and put some stands out there. That's going to create a pretty big drop off behind that. Someone could probably die if they were to fall off. So I don't really know how to get around that.
You'd almost have to build a wall
I think we
high
build
enough that like BK and people won't even attempt to jump over it.
yes. And I mean, yeah. And I think let's build a big concrete wall behind the stand so no one can fall back there. It could be a wall of fame. We could hang some stuff, hit some home runs in that direction. But yeah, I'm not rich. So if I could realistically gift the league something, I'd like to give my time to Sam and Gus. I would like to help them distribute their time to me and other people so that we can keep doing stats like we do, keep getting real-time information out and kind of share the burden a little bit. So I'm an acts of service guy. I'm not a materialist. So that would be my gift.
Your wife must love you then.
I'm very bad at giving gifts. Well, I think she does, but not for that specifically.
I meant the fact that you're an acts of service person.
Oh yes, but I'm also not a big knowing what to get women person. So
Okay.
that's what you got to fix. I think we know.
Yeah. All right. And then I didn't really know how to phrase this. Which team performs worse than they did this past year? If that makes any sense.
Which team's gonna
has a bigger, either more of a drop off or falls down from maybe where they finished? Which team, maybe has the most disappointing season for their expectations?
You think coming up, like who overperformed last year, who's going to drop down a little bit this year?
Yeah, kind of well, not necessarily overperformed. I mean, if you think people are starting to get the Twins number, or if you think, hey, there's no way the Yankees can sustain the performance that they had, or if you think, hey, the Rockies are on a free fall and I think it's going to get worse, like it could not necessarily who's going to finish in 9th place, just for their expectations, who do you think is going to have like maybe the most disappointing season?
Well, I think, and I probably alluded to it earlier, but the first team that jumps out is the Marlins, because their expectation now is, wild card, 5th place, 4th place, possibly. And the pitching, I think, has proven to be we've seen a ceiling. I don't expect that to go up. The hitting was so extraordinary from Luke and Jordan. Individually, I don't know if they're both sustainable. Plus, the rest of the guys rounding out the roster, there's a pretty big gap to get down to them when you look at the metrics. So I think they're going to have a tough run from the Astros, the White Sox, the 3 teams I expect to win the division, of course, maybe even the A's, maybe even the Rockies. I mean, there's going to be some games where those teams are going to battle, and will they go 6-4 again? I'd take the under, probably set their win total at 5. But yeah, I think it's going to be them. I don't see much changing really for any of those other teams.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. And we'll just have to see how spot on the old mad scientist is come season 21. So that'll kind of do it. Any final thoughts, Peter, before we wrap this thing up?
Well, on that note, you'd think I would be spot on at times, but I think over the years, articles I've written, bold predictions I've made, both player and team wise, they've been pretty far off, which I think just shows if you look at the numbers, you make some rational opinions, they can get flipped sideways, upside down year over year. So maybe this will be my year where, end up in the plus money, take a little vacay.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see, but still have fun splicing the numbers, even though they kind of don't mean anything a lot of times.
Yeah. It's fun to talk about, though.
It is.
So, all right, folks, that's going to do it. Merry Christmas again. Hope you all enjoy the holidays. If you are a sponsor out there, if you're a company looking to be a sponsor, we are still looking for sponsors for season 21. If you want to support the longest running wiffle ball league in the country, you can email us at skibbywiffleball@gmail.com. We hope to have some of our sponsors back from previous seasons, but we're always looking for new sponsorships and ways to help not only support this league, but also support our community with our philanthropy and just to make this, something that St. Louis can be proud of. So if you're interested, again, email us at skibbywiffleball@gmail.com. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And until next time, we will see you probably in 2023. Have a good night.
See
Bye,
you.
Pete.
Thanks, Brian.